3. Flynn makes false statements about his communications with Kislyak to incoming administration officials, the media, and the FBI. On January 12, 2017, a Washington Post columnist reported that Flynn and Kislyak communicated on the day the Obama administration announced the Russia sanctions. The column questioned whether Flynn had said something to undercut the U.S. sanctions and whether Flynn's communications had violated the letter or spirit of the Logan Act. President-elect Trump called Priebus after the story was published and expressed anger about it. Priebus recalled that the president-elect asked, "What the hell is this all about?" Conversations with Kislyak. Flynn recalled that he felt a lot of pressure because Priebus had spoken to the, quote, boss, and said Flynn needed to kill the story. Flynn directed McFarland to call the Washington Post columnist and inform him that no discussion of sanctions had occurred. McFarland recalled that Flynn said words to the effect of, quote, "I want to kill the story," end of quote. McFarland made the call as Flynn had requested, although she knew she was providing false information, and the Washington Post updated the column to reflect that a, quote, Trump official had denied that Flynn and Kislyak discussed sanctions. When Priebus and other incoming administration officials questioned Flynn internally about the Washington Post column, Flynn maintained that he had not discussed sanctions with Kislyak. Flynn repeated that claim to Vice President-elect Michael Pence and to incoming Press Secretary Sean Spicer. In subsequent media interviews in mid-January, Pence, Priebus, and Spicer denied that Flynn and Kislyak had discussed sanctions, basing those denials on their conversations with Flynn. The public statements of incoming administration officials denying that Flynn and Kislyak had discussed sanctions alarmed senior DOJ officials, who were aware that the statements were not true. Those officials were concerned that Flynn had lied to his colleagues, who in turn had unwittingly misled the American public, creating a compromise situation for Flynn because the Department of Justice assessed that the Russian government could prove Flynn lied. The FBI investigative team also believed that Flynn's calls with Kislyak and subsequent denials about discussing sanctions raised potential Logan Act issues and were relevant to the FBI's broader Russia investigation. On January 20th, 2017, President Trump was inaugurated and Flynn was sworn in as National Security Advisor. On January 23, 2017, Spicer delivered his first press briefing and stated that he had spoken with Flynn the night before, who confirmed that the calls with Kislyak were about topics unrelated to sanctions. Spicer's statements added to the Department of Justice's concerns that Russia had leverage over Flynn based on his lies and could use that derogatory information to compromise him. On January 24, 2017, Flynn agreed to be interviewed by agents from the FBI. During the interview, which took place at the White House, Flynn falsely stated that he did not ask Kislyak to refrain from escalating the situation in response to the sanctions on Russia imposed by the Obama administration. Flynn also falsely stated that he did not remember a follow-up conversation in which Kislyak stated that Russia had chosen to moderate its response to those sanctions as a result of Flynn's request.
You want to stop there?
Let me do 4. Department of Justice officials notify the White House of their concerns about Flynn. On January 26, 2017, Acting Attorney General Sally Yates contacted White House counsel Donald McGahn and informed him that she needed to discuss a sensitive matter with him in person. Later that day, Yates and Mary McCord, a senior national security official at the Department of Justice, met at the White House with McGahn and White House counsel's office attorney James Burnham. Yates said that the public statements made by the vice president denying that Flynn and Kislyak discussed sanctions were not true and put Flynn in a potentially compromised position because the Russians would know he had lied. Yates disclosed that Flynn had been interviewed by the FBI. She declined to answer a specific question about how Flynn had performed during that interview, but she indicated that Flynn's statements to the FBI were similar to the statements he had made to Pence and Spicer, denying that he had discussed sanctions. McGahn came away from the meeting with the impression that the FBI had not pinned Flynn down on lies, but he asked John Eisenberg, who served as legal advisor to the National Security Council, to examine potential legal issues raised by Flynn's FBI interview and his contacts with Kislyak. That afternoon, McGahn notified the president that Yates had come to the White House to discuss concerns about Flynn. McGahn described what Yates had told him, and the president asked him to repeat it, so he did. McGahn recalled that when he described the FBI interview of Flynn, he said that Flynn did not disclose having discussed sanctions with Kislyak, but that there may not have been a clear violation of 18 U.S.C. 1001. The president asked about Section 1001, and McGahn explained the law to him and also explained the Logan Act. The president instructed McGahn to work with Priebus and Bannon to look into the matter further and direct that they not discuss it with any other officials. Priebus recalled that the president was angry with Flynn in light of what Yates had told the White House and said, "Not again, this guy, this stuff." That evening, the president dined with several senior advisors and asked the group what they thought about FBI Director Comey. According to Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats, who was at the dinner, no one openly advocated terminating Comey, but the consensus on him was not positive. Coats told the group that he thought Comey was a good director. Coats encouraged the president to meet Comey face-to-face and spend time with him before making a decision about whether to retain him.